in the Boy Who Called Wolf, which was the last report, and it is an inflationary decade ahead. You were looking at the monetary and fiscal responses taken by policymakers and the risk of inflation brought on by the responses. So broadly speaking, how have things progressed since that report came out, which has only been, I'm going to say 6 months, I think it is. It's been a really long 18 months. But what do you expect to see happening following on from that?
Yeah, well, we published that special report on inflation, I think, in November last year, and the leitmotif was this story by Aesop, the boy who cried wolf, and as we remember, the shepherd warns basically the people in the village 2 times that a wolf will attack the how do you say that, the herd of sheep, and 2 times nothing happens, and when he warns them for the 3rd time, everybody says, well, screw him, nothing happened previously, so nothing is going to happen now. But then, of course, the wolf attacks the herd and kills the sheep. And now it feels a bit similarly, because in 2008, 2009 with inflation, but also in 2011, and then to some degree in 2013, many people were warning of inflation, of hyperinflation even. And now we are seeing some people, us included, saying, well, inflation will really become a concern, but nobody really listens, and everybody says, well, it's only temporary, so relax and be patient. However, I think if we have a look at what's different this time compared to 2008, 2009. First of all, back then, the broader monetary aggregates, M2, M3, they basically collapsed. If you have a look at M2 and M3 now, they were up 25% last year. They're up significantly this year. Then we're seeing this extreme move that nobody really talked about because it happened last summer in August, that the Federal Reserve moved to average inflation targeting. So basically, they shifted their inflation targeting upwards, and now other central banks are considering similar adjustments. So this means back then, in the previous regime, 2% was basically the ceiling. Now we say, well, because inflation was undershooting over the last couple of years, now we allow inflation rates to overshoot, because we just need on average 2%, which is, from my point of view, it's a pretty big move for central banks. And the interesting thing is, we had to calculate our own scenarios about those inflation targets, those average inflation targets, because nobody ever said, well, we are going back 10 years in history to calculate this inflation average, or we're going 5 years, and how many years into the future are we considering this time frame for this inflation averaging? Nobody ever said that. So it is a clear sign that it will just accept more and more or higher inflation rates, and this gives basically the permission to do so. Then we're seeing, obviously, that in the course of the COVID crisis, velocity has collapsed. Now, as the world is reopening, I see that monetary velocity is stabilizing and is starting to rise now, and it's meeting a flood of liquidity that was created over the last couple of quarters. So this is another inflationary driver. Then we're seeing that globalization, which obviously had a dampening effect on prices over the last couple of years, has come under considerable pressure as a result of the pandemic. So, for example, over here in Europe, we're saying, well, we have to form national champions again. We shouldn't be so dependent on foreign trade and production overseas. Of course, we can produce our stuff at home, but I think the quality will be lower and prices will be higher. So I think that clearly globalization is on retreat. Then we're seeing the growing importance of ESG, which clearly means that access to capital is becoming increasingly difficult for commodity producers. And we're seeing that already in the copper market, for example. We're seeing it with rare earth. We're seeing it also, especially in the oil markets, where if you have a look at oil prices, they're going nuts. And from my point of view, they will go even higher, and we'll see a triple digits probably this year. Then we're also seeing this rise of political tensions that we talked about before already. I think it's no coincidence that the last summit between China and the US took place in Alaska. And obviously the mood between those two superpowers is not really good, and it didn't really improve with Joe Biden now being president. So this was also confirmed by the last G7 meeting, where now China is the enemy. So this is really like a Cold War 2.0. Then we are seeing also a very important driver on the inflationary side. I think we're seeing a clear shortage of labor in certain industries. We're seeing rising minimum wages. When we're seeing rising globally, really rising unit labor costs. So from my point of view, I think wages at some point people will say, well, we want and we need higher wages. So this starts the whole spiral. Then we're seeing also some other longer term drivers like demographics turning more inflationary now. We dedicated a long chapter to that topic. And I think what's also important, Michael, is the fact that if you listen to central bankers nowadays, be it Madame Lagarde or Jay Powell, they sometimes, they sound like social workers or Greenpeace activists. And this is just, I don't want to criticize that, but it's just an observation that it seems that their mandate has changed, and I know the Federal Reserve Act. I've read the laws about the European Union and about the ECB and its mandates, and it hasn't been changed as far as I know. And I don't see that fighting climate change is a real mandate of a central banks, or reducing inequality is the mandate of a central bank. But this is happening. Again, I don't want to judge it, but just want to observe that nowadays they look at completely different things, and they include different things into their reasoning and into their decisions. But let's face it, from my point of view, we're still kind of overestimating what central banks are doing, and we're underestimating the importance of fiscal policy. I think that over the last couple of months, we really saw moving from monetary dominance to fiscal dominance. So we should listen much more to what the White House says and does. And what's the consequence for let's say, our asset class, and what's the consequence for inflation? Of course, fiscal policy has a much more direct and faster impact on the economy, on inflation rates. While with traditional quantitative easing, you were trying to stimulate the economy via the banking system. It didn't really work. It just resulted in asset price inflation primarily. But now with this fiscal policy, I think there will be lots of reasons for new fiscal packages. There will be a Green New Deal and the Infrastructure New Deal, which is already happening. And then, of course, education, and then climate change, and whatever. There will be many, many new deals, many new packages. And of course, I mean, we see that the effect is how do you say, fading off pretty quickly. It's like if you drink like 2 Red Bull, of course it kicks in and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
I've got so much energy, but then it fades off pretty quickly, and you feel worse and you feel almost depressed. So this is happening, and I think it's what people really underestimate, that fiscal policy has taken over.
Yeah, and I had it pointed out to me that the GFC, they generated about $800 billion in funds to try and get the markets back up and running, and we're at $12+ trillion at the moment for COVID, and about less effect as well.
$1 trillion used to be lots of money, but now nobody cares anymore.
No, that's the thing that seems to be the scariest to me, is it doesn't matter how many zeros there are, no one really cares, or doesn't. It's stopped mattering. At the end of the day, every one of those zeros has some impact somewhere, but they've stopped caring quite so much.